Welcome to the JP8 Report. This is James Pierce with the JP8 Report. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. This is episode 32. Welcome to the dark side of things. Thank y'all for tuning in. And just a reminder before we all get started, I can be reached at jp8report@gmail.com. And then I'm on Podbean. My primary is Rumble. And then I'm on Yahoo also, and a whole slew of other different platforms that translate out from the different platforms. Thank y'all for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe. Okay. This episode is Welcome to the Dark Side of Things. Wow. So the dark side. Wow. That's what that company called itself that did the ransom attack on the Colonial Pipeline that runs from Houston all the way up the East Coast and delivers 55% of all the gasoline and JP8, which is jet fuel, throughout the eastern side of the United States. It's unbelievable. We already know who they are. And with the president saying, well, we're monitoring the situation. What do you mean by monitoring the situation? If you know who the group is, that means you know who their IP addresses are. Why don't we, since they call themselves the dark side, why don't we play Jedi and spike their network? Okay. What I mean by that is when you put a bug in someone's as a countermeasure and destroy their system. They should be treated like terrorists, just like our country's policy, concerning nuclear weapons, use of nuclear weapons on U.S. Citizens, or chemical or biological weapons on U.S. citizens. The retaliation is twice as bad. Okay, and unless our policies have changed over the years, but we need to reassure our adversaries that we mean business. I heard it on TV just a little while ago. You don't see American companies hacking into Russian systems at all. So why are Russian companies hacking into American systems? It's because they can get away with it. We have a very lax security system in our country. We don't have a force of people to go after those. I mean, yeah, we can trace IP addresses. We lock them up. Well, when an attack comes from a foreign country, they got to leave their server system and go into our server system to be able to get into that company's website. That's an act of terror. That's an act of war, in my opinion. And my opinion may differ from others, but I was in the communications background in the Army. I know how serious it can be. If you disable a nation's communication infrastructure, you leave them dead in the water. Even though this is a ransom attack, it could be a trial for something bigger in the future. And if the government says, well, we're just monitoring the situation, and wow, really? Come on. It came out also recently, I heard it yesterday, that SolarWinds, there was a Russian cyber attack against the United States, a very devastating one, in November, I believe right after the election. And it was based in Austin, Texas, in a company called SolarWinds. And the Russians were able to intrude their system. You would not believe. You ever heard of people say, don't use password as a password, or don't use guest as a password? Well, these cats, they use SolarWinds123 as a password. And the company name is SolarWinds. How crazy is that? Why would you do that to your system? Man, I don't know. Sometimes I think several minutes on how to change a password, because our requirements are so stringent, and you're like, okay, do I use numbers and capital letters and characters and then make a sentence out of it. That's what people do and stuff. Um, the But when you use a simple password of SolarWinds 123, come on. So the main people involved in doing stuff like this, there's four culprits in the world that are always attacking American communications infrastructure and companies. That would be Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China. Okay, and they're always going there. Well, when you're China, you're mainly looking for industrial top secrets. Okay, you're just trying to get in, get your stuff, and get out. Russia and North Korea, they're a different story. In Iran, they're just belligerent. Okay, that's all right. They think they got it going on, but eventually they're going to get their due. We need to interdict it to prevent it. Strengthen and fortify our communications network. Right now you got 128 kilobit encryption. It needs to be a national standard for everybody, including basic computer systems when they have security, antivirus security. It automatically needs to go to 256 and maybe to 512. Okay. And you see companies going to that route anyway. And I got written on there possible solutions. The antagonist should be treated as terrorist or as an act of war, which is right. Throughout our history, we've had terrorist organizations go after the United States, and we just went right back after them. We've been doing it for 20 years. But you don't have to drop a bomb and blow them to smithereens. Like I said earlier, like some other countries do to Iranian targets and stuff. They just find a way into their network, and then they spike it. Then it's done. Okay, and then you take the people into custody also. I'm not saying deep state stuff where that our CIA people go in and just take them out. Maybe that needs to be done. That would solve a lot of problems. Just make sure that they're not American. And if they did do that, none of us in the public need to know about it. That needs to be a deep, dark secret and hidden from public knowledge whatsoever. Okay? Just people disappeared. That's all. And, no one cares about them anyway because they're criminals. Okay? But we don't need to be putting a picture up on the major newspapers of the country and say, look what we did. Why did we have to actually kill them? No, we don't need to know about that. There's just some things people just don't need to know. Okay? Why are they doing this? Maybe on the dark side of things, they're trying to test our new president. New presidents are always tried in the public arena, whether it be Russia with all their soldiers near the Ukraine and still occupying the Crimea, and threatening through gestures to be able to involve and get force a reaction from U.S. assets. They buzz Alaska. They buzz our aircraft groups. They do it, try it, to test us, to see our resolve, and see how we would act. The same thing with China. China keeps doing the same thing to Taiwan. They keep building up these man-made islands in the South China Sea. They fortify and restrict rights of people that live in Hong Kong just so they can test to see how the United States is going to react. And that can go a long way. Okay, you make the wrong move. I read an article on a website on 1945.com, He was talking about what would happen if China attacked Taiwan. Well, we have a mutual defense agreement with Taiwan. If Taiwan is attacked by China, we would immediately interdict in on the side of Taiwan. But what is that going to do? You're going to get a lot of Americans killed, a lot of people in Taiwan killed, a lot of people in China killed. But a direct confrontation between two nuclear powers can lead into devastating results. And part of the scenario in that article was if the Chinese attacked Taiwan, we would immediately attack China, and then to eliminate the strain on forces in China from American attacks, North Korea would probably cross the DMZ and then enforce an action against South Korea and American forces there, which would require us to send soldiers to Korea also to defend our turf there and attack Japan at the same time. And so we're spread thin across the region. And then they counterattack against Taiwan, and then we would counterattack against China. Next thing you know, there's an exchange of nuclear weapons. But at the same time, we know Taiwan can defend itself. Our goal with Taiwan should be the same goal with Israel. Make it so painful that if anybody attacks them, they would lose. Make it so painful for anyone to attack Taiwan or attack Israel that opposing group would be hurt drastically. Okay, it's about. I'm sure it's easy to find if you go on to 1945.com and look for that. Is a two-part article. Okay, boy, I got off subject on that one. History is my thing. I like reading about that, even though that's not history; that's future. History is always in the past. Let's see. North Korea won't talk to the Biden administration. Yesterday, or day before yesterday, an American warship had a fire on Iranian speedboats. There was like 18 speedboats that were harassing American ships. They were escorting an American submarine into the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, and all of a sudden, all these fast boats come out there with their weapons shown. I guess they didn't fire any, but they were harassing American ships, and we had to fire warning shots for them to disperse. That's an open seaway, so why should we be harassed going inside there anyway? I guess the Iranians still think they own it, and they don't. It's free. That'll cause a war too. You blow up a ship inside the Strait of Hormuz. If you ever want to see the action about that stuff, read up on the history of the Iraq-Iranian War and what happened to the sea vessels in the Persian Gulf, and the actions that President Reagan had to take during the late 80s when he was still president. Every time Iranians would blow up oil platforms and attack ships, and just read about that stuff. Okay, Hamas attacked Israel yesterday. It was in response to some Jewish and Jewish and Muslim holy sites inside of Jerusalem itself. It sparked, and Hamas, this poor little province in the south part of Israel, between Israel and Egypt, this poor little country has rockets. They have short, medium, long-range rockets, and they were firing them yesterday, making Israel use their Iron Dome. If they're so poor, where are they getting all this? I heard Mike Huckabee yesterday say the solution is when Palestinian moms, how did he put that? When Palestinian moms hate losing their children more than hating Israel, the fighting will stop, which means they're not going to gain a single inch by sacrificing all their kids to attack Israel, when all they have to do is live peacefully. But take a step back, and all it is, they're still testing the Biden administration. How will President Biden, react to a direct confrontation with Iran? Are they going to, will we launch surface-to-surface strikes, or bombing raids, air-to-surface strikes? Will we do a kinetic event where we interdict ground troops? What are the rules of engagement for doing something like that? Russia, if Russian troops or insurgents go back into further into the Ukraine, what do we do then? How about this scenario? What if Russia turns off the natural gas and the petroleum products going into Europe? Since they're so dependent on Russian gas and oil, what happens when that happens? Would that be considered an act of war? Because it would just devastate the economies in Europe. What would happen if China abruptly suspended everything inside of Hong Kong? What would we do then? Eliminate trade on the on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange? Would we boycott the Beijing Olympics? You tell me. Write me. JP8 Report at gmail.com. All the Biden administration is concerned with right now is the climate change and the climate change and the non-crisis on the southern border, and try to institute socialism inside the United States. You know, they forget about the stuff that's happening around the world. Right now, I read in the newspaper this morning, U.S. forces are getting ready to leave Afghanistan, right? And they're destroying everything in sight. Okay, and that's so the Taliban can't get a hold of it. But what happened to helping to keep the Afghan army resupplied, the Afghan police resupplied? Why do you have to completely shred and destroy everything and leave it in a pile of rubble so the Afghanis see what's going on, and they get upset because their whole area around there where the military base used to be at was just full of trash, and we left it. So much for environmental concerns. Like National Park, you bring trash in, you take your trash out, supposedly. I guess it doesn't apply when you're in a foreign country. But all we're doing is showing other countries around the world and criminal groups around the world that we're weak, that we won't take action. You know, actions speak louder than words. And the little games we play sometimes can have an effect on nationwide events for decades. Sometimes you got to stand up to the bully and he'll back down. But then there's sometimes you got to be willing to use that club in your hand and knock him down a size. And that's easy to say with it's easy to do with some of these cyber criminal groups, and all they are a bunch of gangsters. You look at the mafia people throughout history that go out and extort money from you, like, hey, we're the neighborhood protection agency. You owe us 10% of your gross revenue for protection. Well, these cyber guys are the same type, but they're high tech and they extort money on the internet and they can cripple your business. I'm not going to say what type of business I do, but I could imagine something like that happen to us. But on a national level, if like Verizon or AT&T went down, oh wow, could you imagine getting to the SpaceX facility, which is run by Elon Musk? I doubt if that would ever happen. But some of this infrastructure, if they got their hands in it, and they could wreak serious havoc, and we would pay a dear price on it. What would happen if someone got into the electric grid and took it down and we were without electricity nationally for a week or even 3 days? What would that do to everything? Everything runs on electricity. Or of a foreign agent launched, and it doesn't have to be an ICBM, but what if someone was able to launch a medium range rocket into the air and pop an EMP over a major city? That would that could devastate a city for a year or two while everything is being replaced. And what if that city had a critical infrastructure for the United States in it? Oh my goodness, things could happen seriously, and that is, I think, you might say, James, you're being a conspiracist. You know what? That's reality, and people need to know about that stuff. Some of this stuff, I learned a lot of this when I was in the Army, and it scared the living daylights out of you. But it can happen very easily. Okay. And this deal about the Colonial Pipeline, that's serious. They don't have as far as we know, there's not a ransom attempt. But if I was the federal government, I would like, let me take care of it, find them, and take them out. And if they're in a foreign country, like I think this is an Eastern European Russian type organization, get into the system, spike them, or spike them. All right. That's today's episode. I just remember we got 1,349 days left in this administration as of the day. Today's May 11th. I know we got to support our president no matter what party he is. We got to hold him accountable. We got to make sure they actually do the right things. And the more time they refuse to grasp reality of what's really happening in our country, the worse it can get for all of us. And then stop playing the little games with we want to pass this act and this act. Let's just act to protect the individual Americans and our way of life. Okay, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, if you kill our infrastructure, there's not going to be life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. Can you imagine? Let me put it to you like this: if the infrastructure of the United States was taken down for a month, okay, for a month, what would be the death toll in our country from violence, anarchy, and lack of food and medicine? Think about that for a moment. That's why it's so important we build an infrastructure. That's infrastructure support right there. Eliminating the threat to cyber attacks in our country. And, all we have to do is put forth the effort to do it. And one of, my suggestions, make everything 256 or 512. Make it impossible for eons to be able to break in someone's system. Okay? Don't make weak passwords either. Not Cylinder. They're out of business. SolarWinds 123. Dude, you failed. Okay? Someone needs to just put you up against the wall and slap you about 50 times whoever made up that password. I'm glad. Hey, just so you know, none of mine's that simple. Okay. So I hope you all have a good day. Thanks for watching. Remember, this is episode 32. Welcome to the dark side of things. Subscribe, hit notifications, or follow, and share this to a friend. And let's keep this process going. Episode 32. Welcome to the dark side of things. And I'm not your father, but I'll catch you on the flip side. This is James out.